Welcome to the VC3 News Update. I am Shanette Hackshaw and these are top local news stories. The National Emergency Management Organization NEMO will tomorrow host a Tsunami Ready recognition ceremony. The event takes place at the Beachcombers Hotel Conference Room and will feature addresses from the Minister of Public Services, Consumer Affairs and Sports, Frederick Stevenson. He is also the Member of Parliament for South Windward, which includes Argyll, one of the communities that will be recognized. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Mobilization, Hudson Ned, and the Deputy Director of International Tsunami Information, Mrs. Krista Hildebrand Andretti. Speaking to VC3 News, NEMO's Director Michelle Forbes says tomorrow's event is a combination of work put in by NEMO and the communities since 2018.
We first worked on the Kingston Rose Place community. It was one of the first communities we started working on a different program. And then we extended it in 2020, looking at Kingston to Argyll, because of course Kingston is a built-up area. That's where most of the population tend to be during the week in particular. So we worked from Kingston to Argyll to include Rose Place, from Rose Place, all the coastal communities from Kingston to Argyll. So we have Rose Place, we have Sign Hill Bay, we have Annesville, Calico, and going out Brighton, Diamond, Argyll. So these are the communities that are involved.
Ms. Forbes said community consultations were part of the public education and standard operating procedures were also developed.
Now we're at the stage. We would have done the community consultations, the awareness, we would have developed the SOPs, and we're installing signs. If you go around, you should see signs, tsunami evacuation route signs, tsunami hazard zone signs, assembly point sign, and a big billboard showing you the tsunami map, the inundation areas, and plotting also where the assembly points are and evacuation routes. So those are throughout the coastal communities from Kingston to Argyll. So I'm not sure if you have seen any. You can look around and you'll see. So it's a lot of work has been involved over the last 3 years to get us to that stage where we are tsunami ready.
Deputy Director of the International Tsunami Information Center, Mrs. Krista Hildebrand Andretti, said her office supports the implementation of the UNESCO IOC Tsunami Ready program and expressed delight that tomorrow's event will recognize the communities that met the indicators of the Tsunami Ready program.
So they will be recognized, these communities will be recognized by UNESCO IOC tomorrow and be receiving the certificate of Tsunami Ready, as well as certificates of appreciation for the very hard work that they have done in meeting the 12 indicators of the program, which span assessment, preparedness, and response capabilities.
She said NEMO has been working, especially over the last 5 years, to strengthen its tsunami response capabilities and also outreach, education, and awareness of the communities and other agencies and stakeholders to be able to rapidly become aware of a potential tsunami threat and be able to disseminate that information to communities so that they will be able to respond quickly. Heaps of praises was sung for former Ambassador Vaughn Toney by the 4 guests who appeared on last evening's edition of Round the Table Talk. Consul General Rodney McIntosh, speaking on Ambassador Toney, said that he struggled to summarize the late ambassador, as there is no single Vincentian in the United States who has made the contribution that Toney did. He said when asked about the ambassador, he regards it as the greatest loss to Vincentians in the United States.
I try and I struggle to find a summary statement that will give justice to Ambassador at large, Mr. Toney. And the reason why I say that I struggle is because there are, in my humble opinion, there is not one single Vincentian here in the United States who has made the sterling and outstanding contribution, not even close to what Mr. Toney made to our community. And as I go around and people will ask about him, and especially people who are not non-Vincentians, I say to them that this is by far our greatest loss to our community here in the United States.
Mr. McIntosh went further to say that whilst the other guests at the table would have spent a longer time around the late ambassador, he had the pleasure of interacting with him during his trips back home, as both of them were from the town of Kalioquo.
I knew Mr. Tony in Kalioquo. I knew him when he returned home because he was living in the United States for quite some time. And, I'm a pleasant gentleman. He would meet me and ask, young man, how are you doing? And always with this pleasant smile. It's not until I start coming to the United States, sometime around 1995, with the band Signal, doing my music, playing my musical trade, that I start hearing about his contributions. And I'm sure Sherilyn and many Vincentians will tell you that you will hardly meet a Vincentian here in Brooklyn, especially, who was not touched and impacted by this man. Many would tell you that they got their start here in the United States. And we are talking about persons who are here on vacation, persons who came up from St. Vincent for the summer. He found a job, for these people. Most of the organizations will tell you as well that most of their functions held at Friends of Crown Heights as a result of the position that he held, the CEO position, and the sponsorship and even the consulate.
In a career spanning more than 4 decades of exemplary public service and advocacy in the fields of child care and early childhood education, legislative reform, community empowerment, and political activism, Tony was the recipient of numerous awards and commendations celebrating his lifelong commitment and leadership in the service of others. In appreciation of his exceptional contribution to the Vincentian diaspora, Tony was formally accredited as an ambassador at large by the government of Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves in September of 2022. Former Consul General to Canada and OECS liaison to Canada, Joseph Burns-Bunady, also had similar words of regards for the late Tony. Mr. Bunady said the death of Tony is a tremendous loss in terms of his contribution on an annual basis for the Vincentian community. He said that Tony was deserving of the ambassador title.
So that is, of course, a tremendous loss in terms of his contribution on an annual basis, right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When the Prime Minister and the government named him Ambassador at Large, it was an honor that was due to him. He deserved it. And he was never asking for anything, He never asked for anything. He just keep going and going like the what they call it, the thing bunny?
The Energizer.
The Energizer bunny.
Still locally, as part of the Safe Schools Recognition Program, the Ministry of Education and National Reconciliation is working with CDMA and UNICEF to deliver 2 seminars. The National Safe School Policy Guide, which includes the Model Safe School Program Toolbox, recommends the education sector implementation strategy, which includes the Safe School Recognition Program. Throughout 2017, 12 ministries of education throughout the Caribbean approved the Model Safe School Program as their preferred strategy for lowering risk in the educational field. 2 sessions make up the 1-week course, which takes place at the University of the West Indies Global Campus in SVG from September 18 to the 22. 16 pilot schools will take part in workshops, and 12 local collaborating organizations will be trained to use a Model Safe School Program assessment tool in Workshop 2. The School Safety Recognition Program will eventually make it possible to promote leadership, creativity, and commitment in the educational field, together with best practices for safe school standards. In addition, it is intended that through fostering a culture of safety across the entire nation, it would act as a first step in the mitigation and reduction of catastrophic risk. A school safety recognition program should be included in the National Safe and Green Strategy, being prepared for implementation in the education sector, according to the National Safe Schools Policy Guide on the Model Safe School Program Toolbox. And finally, in news from the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force. The late Mr. Henry Providence, Inspector of Police, passed away in hospital on September 13, leaving the members of the RSVG Police Force and its auxiliary forces in sadness. On December 27, 1996, Inspector Providence joined the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force. He dedicated 27 years of his life to the organization and the people of this country. He was working at the Georgetown Police Station in the Eastern Division when he passed away. Inspector Providence was calm and thorough in his duties, according to Mr. Hestron Ballantyne, the Eastern Division's divisional commander and superintendent of police. According to a statement released by the RSVG Police Force, they are heartbroken to learn of his demise since he had a wonderful working connection with the Georgetown Police Station crew. He held positions in Barley, Criminal Investigations Division, Traffic Branch, the Kittals Police Station, and the Georgetown Police Station over the course of his career. He was a police officer with a lot of versatility who always carried himself with professionalism. That's our local news stories. Continue watching on Channel 114, where we bring you regional and international news.